At 2:14 a.m., far below the Iranian desert, inside the fortified Natanz enrichment complex, sealed beneath layers of reinforced concrete, hundreds of centrifuges keep spinning as if it were an ordinary night. Then something subtle changes. No alarms echo through the halls. No visible system breakdown appears. Only a small group of numbers on the main control display begins shifting in a way it should not. Above ground, the skies remain quiet. No aircraft are confirmed inside Iranian airspace, and Tehran's radar picture still shows a clear horizon. But beneath the desert, Natanz, Iran's most protected underground enrichment site designed to function beyond the reach of standard military pressure, has already become part of something much larger. At 2:18 a.m., Iranian radar stations near the Persian Gulf pick up a weak anomaly at the edge of detection. It is not a clean target, and it is not immediately classified as a direct breach. It is only a faint electronic trace appearing and disappearing in short pulses. The system identifies it as an airborne electronic warfare platform. Moments later, a scramble order is issued for Su-35s from the south. Coastal radar stations raise their sensitivity, trying to sharpen the signal and hold a stable track. But what appears on their screens is not a large formation. It is an EA-18G Growler operating just outside Iran's air defense identification zone. Then the Growler activates its next-generation mid-band jamming pods. Across the Persian Gulf battlespace, Iranian tracking systems are flooded with adaptive DRFM deception and low-level electronic noise, carefully designed to confuse positioning data and distort the air picture. Iran reacts quickly. Its layered coastal defense network comes alive. Several radar sites attempt to lock onto the same target at once, trying to pin the Growler in place. For a brief moment, the data seems to align, then it breaks apart. The target flickers. Its position shifts several kilometers away from where the system predicted it should be. The Growler's deception layer begins feeding manipulated return signals directly into Iranian tracking calculations, turning the radar picture into something unstable and difficult to trust. Interceptors are sent into the night, moving straight into the electronic interference zone. The Growler responds immediately with pulses, false signatures, and decoy emissions. Within seconds, the guidance chain begins to fracture. Inside Tehran's command network, the real problem is no longer firepower. It is uncertainty. The air picture can no longer be fully trusted. As the IRGC tries to restore order inside the system, the Growler holds its position, quietly transmitting environmental and targeting data back into the joint US-Israeli network. The airspace over the Persian Gulf begins to divide into separate layers of control. At the outer edge, the EA-18G Growler keeps applying electronic pressure. Deeper inside, another signal appears, silent, fast, and almost invisible to conventional radar. An F-35I Adir enters the battle space. On Iranian radar screens, it does not appear as a solid object. Instead, it shows up as brief, unstable ghost-like traces that flicker for a moment and then fade. Multiple radar nodes begin comparing data, searching for confirmation. Then Iran realizes this is not an isolated anomaly. It is part of a coordinated penetration linked to the US-Israeli network. The F-35I shifts into its mission profile, syncing targeting information with the Growler through the shared battlespace network. While Iranian systems struggle to separate real signals from false ones, the operation moves into its next phase. The mission now moves beyond reconnaissance and shifts toward direct pressure on the Coastal Air Defense Command Center. At 2:27 a.m., Iranian command realizes its ground-based radar network is being heavily disrupted. In response, the Su-35S squadron is ordered to switch into passive hunting mode. The pilots shut down their active radar systems completely, blending into the darkness while trying to locate the F-35I formation through optical and infrared sensors, searching for the faint heat signature of its engines. This silent countermeasure forces the Israeli F-35I formation into strict electronic silence. The aircraft operate inside extremely narrow engagement windows, constantly changing altitude and position to avoid being caught at close range by Iranian fighters. Instead of forcing a direct confrontation, Iran uses the Su-35S squadron together with coastal terrain masking to create passive ambush zones. At the same time, multiple ADM-160MALD decoys launched by the US-Israeli formation begin filling the battlespace with false radar and thermal signatures. For Iranian pilots and the air defense network, the sky turns into a crowded maze of overlapping targets, where every signal must be questioned. Israel proceeds with precision targeting against confirmed positions. But as the munitions move toward their objectives, Iran's passive systems begin altering the guidance environment just enough to affect final accuracy. Several incoming weapons drift away from their intended paths and fall into prepared decoy zones. At 2:35 a.m., while the skies above the Persian Gulf remain dominated by the Growler's electronic pressure and the F-35I formation's precision operations. A third layer of the mission begins far from the visible battle space. Inside Iran's industrial control infrastructure, a separate data stream moves quietly through maintenance channels that appear routine. It does not pass through radar or airspace. Instead, it travels through internal technical update pathways that are trusted within the Natanz operational chain. A software package, later identified as Phantom Echo, is introduced through a compromised industrial maintenance channel used by Iranian subcontractors servicing Siemens Step 7 systems. It is disguised as a normal timing calibration update, blending into the system without raising immediate concern. No internal warning systems inside the isolated facility are triggered. But once the package reaches the PLC control layer, it begins merging with the operational rhythm of the centrifuges. The IRGC command does not wait for more confirmation. Natanz is placed into internal isolation mode. Control sections are separated from one another, and each area now requires manual authentication. Automated links are cut off completely. At this point, the priority is no longer normal operation. The priority becomes finding the source of the anomaly, now living inside the system itself. Iranian engineering teams begin manually reconstructing the signal paths. They quickly understand that this is not a damaged update or a simple technical error. It is a carefully structured intrusion hidden inside the industrial control logic. A concealed process is discovered, disguised as ordinary maintenance activity. But it is operating at a much deeper control layer, beyond the visibility of standard monitoring systems. Phantom Echo is not a conventional virus, and it is not a simple one-step breach. It is a multi-layer cyber-electronic intrusion framework built to combine electronic deception, long-term industrial persistence, and deep PLC-level manipulation into one synchronized operational tool. It begins by embedding itself inside the SCADA monitoring layer, quietly aligning with the facility's industrial telemetry. Only after blending into that data flow does it move deeper, reaching the PLC control chain responsible for regulating centrifuge motor behavior. Natanz is quickly shifted into manual control. All automated connections are cut, and the suspected process is located inside the visible control layer. Iranian technicians remove it, erase its traces from the monitoring systems, and move the fragment into an internal quarantine zone. At first, everything appears to improve. The timing deviations vanish, operational synchronization returns, and the system seems to regain stability. From the outside, it looks as if the incident has been contained. But the removed process is only a decoy fragment. The real core of Phantom Echo had already separated from the exposed layer before Iranian engineers reached it. What they discovered was a carefully planted trail designed to pull the investigation in the wrong direction. The remaining payload is no longer inside the area Iran is currently inspecting. At 2:43 a.m. above the Persian Gulf, the aerial battlespace continues to intensify. The EA-18G Growler holds its offshore position, maintaining electronic pressure, while Israeli F-35I formations conduct precision operations against outer radar nodes. These operations are not meant to fully disable the network. Their purpose is to make Iran activate backup systems, increase emissions, and reveal the deeper structure of its integrated air defense network. The IRGC responds immediately, launching a large-scale aerial countermeasure to protect its command core. Offshore, a dense electronic warfare spiral begins to unfold, forcing both the Growler and the F-35I formation to operate under rising pressure from Iranian defensive systems and electronic interference. That response triggers a new cycle of escalation. The Growler is pushed into a constantly changing interference environment as Iran adjusts its jamming frequencies in real time. The US side is forced to keep reshaping its electronic warfare model, while the situation changes second by second. At the same time, Iran's passive radar networks begin narrowing their detection zones around the Israeli aircraft. Maneuver space becomes tighter, and the stealth advantage begins to weaken under layered tracking pressure. But the most important effect is not in the sky. It is inside Natanz. When Iran activates isolation mode and shifts the facility into manual control, the sudden transition creates a brief timing gap inside the system logic. That gap is exactly what Phantom Echo has been waiting for. By trying to protect the facility, Iran unknowingly creates the opening the hidden code needs to move deeper. At 2:55 a.m., as pressure across the Persian Gulf reaches its highest point, Iran's integrated air defense network pulls its radar, interceptor, and electronic warfare assets into one unified response structure. Inside the chaos of layered jamming and multi-node tracking, Iranian systems briefly achieve a breakthrough. Active and passive sensors converge long enough to create a workable engagement solution against the F-35I Adir formation. At the same moment, a powerful electronic suppression wave disrupts the Israeli aircraft's radar and guidance environment. The F-35I formation is pushed into a reduced combat state, with unstable targeting capability and limited precision performance. The response comes instantly. The EA-18G Growler shifts into full electronic countermeasure mode, pushing powerful interference against Iranian radar emitters while coordinating suppression actions against exposed radar nodes that are still trying to maintain a track on the F-35I formation. The airspace over the Persian Gulf becomes a crowded electronic arena, with both sides locked in a high-intensity contest of signals, sensors, and countermeasures. Iran's air defense network is pushed close to its operational limit as it tries to absorb pressure from multiple directions at once. The result is a chaotic standoff, with neither side gaining full control. But as the outer defense network becomes overloaded, the most important vulnerability appears far below the surface. Beneath Iran's ground infrastructure, the critical core is now exposed. At this point, the battlefield settles into a tense mechanical deadlock. Both sides achieve partial tactical success, but neither secures complete dominance. The F-35I formation is still affected, but remains operational. Iranian systems are still active but stretched thin. Electronic warfare continues in a balanced cycle of disruption and response. Yet beneath this fragile balance, the Natanz sequence continues on its own, untouched by the aerial stalemate above. At 3:10 a.m., while the engagement in the sky remains frozen in a narrow balance, the decisive shift happens deep inside Natanz. The hidden payload moves from a dormant state into active control. At the kernel level, Phantom Echo takes hold of the centrifuge control chain. It begins forcing the systems into unstable oscillation cycles beyond safe operating limits, creating severe mechanical stress across multiple rotor assemblies. At the same time, the electronic battlefield above begins to shift again. With continuous signal support from the Growler, the F-35I Adir formation restores targeting stability and reconnects fully with the U.S.-Israeli network. Battlefield data is synchronized into a unified multi-axis targeting structure, allowing precise action against exposed Iranian radar and command nodes. The pressure builds quickly. Iran's remaining air defense structure begins to lose cohesion as its radar and command layers are hit from multiple directions. Inside Iranian command systems, the crisis becomes impossible to manage. Natanz is breaking down from within, while above ground, radar and command infrastructure are being steadily neutralized. The IRGC is forced to divide its response between two fronts at the same time, overloading decision cycles and disrupting operational coordination. Unable to maintain stable control across either domain, Iran issues a full withdrawal order. Radar emissions are shut down and forces are pulled back into hardened underground shelters to preserve command continuity and protect personnel. As Iranian air defenses disengage, U.S. and Israeli forces complete their objectives and leave the region in controlled formation, maintaining electronic silence as they exit contested airspace. The operation ends with Iran's air defense network fragmented and the Natanz core critically disabled. But the most remarkable part of the operation is not the visible engagement above the Persian Gulf. It is Phantom Echo, a next-generation cyber-electronic infiltration architecture synchronized across electronic warfare, stealth penetration, and industrial disruption layers. Unlike Stuxnet in the 2000s, Phantom Echo does not depend on physical delivery through removable devices. Its payload had already been placed deep inside compromised industrial maintenance pathways long before the operation began. During the wider operation, electronic warfare aircraft provided electromagnetic masking, timing support, and signal manipulation to conceal the activation sequence. At the same time, Iran's own emergency procedures unknowingly opened the final access window inside Natanz. Iran believed it was fighting an air battle over the Persian Gulf. In reality, that air battle was only the outer shell of a deeper operation already unfolding inside Natanz. Every radar activation, every isolation procedure, and every emergency response quietly moved the facility closer to Phantom Echo's final execution chain.